Well, President Trump sent Hollywood reeling on Sunday after making an announcement that he would be implementing 100% tariffs on films, just films, by the way, we can get into what all of that means, but that are produced outside of the United States. Now, we don't even know what that means because there's some questions of co-production. There's production in one place and also another place, but let's just take a listen to Donald Trump on Sunday explaining what he's doing.
What they've done is other nations have been stealing the movie-making capabilities from the United States. And I said to a couple of people, what do you think? I've done some very strong research over the last week, and we're making very few movies now. Hollywood is being destroyed. Now, you have an incompetent, grossly incompetent governor that allowed that to happen, so I'm not just blaming other nations, but other nations, a lot of them, have stolen our movie industry. And I'm saying, if they're not willing to make a movie inside the United States, then we should have a tariff on movies that come in. And not only that, governments are actually giving big money. I mean, they're supporting them financially. So that's sort of a threat to our country in a sense. And it's been a very popular thing. I can tell you one thing, movie makers love it.
And so you can see the Truth Social post, this is B2, that Donald Trump put out, that again, this all sent Hollywood absolutely reeling. You can see here, he narrowly mentions movies, and he says movies coming into our country that are produced in foreign lands. He invokes the question of national security, and we can control and throw up B3 whenever we want. This is The Hollywood Reporter, which has had pretty good coverage of this over the last 48 hours. The Hollywood Reporter basically is, I don't want to say they're forced to admit this, but Hollywood in general is kind of forced to admit that it is true. There have been incentives for some productions to go to places like Canada and Hungary. There's production that happens, post-production that happens in places like the UK. But what's I think also very interesting is this sounds like Donald Trump is thinking about China in particular. So when he is invoking national security, it sounds like he's making an argument people like me made 5 years ago about China. And since then, since the pandemic, actually, a lot of that has changed. I'm going to skip ahead here to B5, and we can just roll through A and B. But if we look at B5A, this is a chart from the New York Times. And you can see here the top 10 movies each year in China in the 2010s. A lot of them were actually Hollywood movies. Now, a lot of them are not Hollywood movies. 2023, not a single Hollywood movie in the top 10. And so what happened is that Hollywood reached out to China. We've had Chris Fenton on to talk about how he was a leader in trying to broker that relationship between Hollywood and China. And it was a massive source of growth for Hollywood as they were being wrecked by streaming, as everything was being thrown into chaos by streaming. And here's another great chart from the New York Times. Revenue from top grossing movies is shrinking in China. So again, 2023, non-Hollywood movies, all the revenue in China. So all this is to say, this has changed significantly over the last 5 years. These questions of national security concerns that were raised during the filming of Top Gun 2, for example, where you had the Pentagon heavily collaborating on a movie. That's all Pentagon equipment. That's very common in Hollywood, has been for a couple of decades. They literally cooperate with the Department of Defense and bring in training exercises, and that's what you see in a lot of like Jerry Bruckheimer movies and things like Top Gun, frankly. So that was considered a national security concern because China had censorship power over the script. They took the Taiwanese flag off Tom Cruise's bomber jacket. And what's very interesting—
Why did he have a Taiwanese flag on his bomber jacket?
It was in the 80s too. It's sort of like part of the whole thing. But anyway, this has already changed so much. Hollywood feels like China has already learned everything that it can and is already making some of these incredible movies by using what Donald Trump says there about how they're taking American film know-how. I mean, that sort of has already, that process has kind of already played out, and China isn't even the concern anymore because Hollywood isn't cooperating with China at the rate that it was just a couple of years ago. So it's a really interesting move. I mean, you can, I guess, reshore some stuff that's been pushed to Canada and the UK, but a lot of this, first of all, movies do need to be filmed on location in other parts of the world, and some of it is just for example, just before I toss it to you, Ryan, the strikes in Hollywood a couple of years ago, it costs more money to make movies in the United States than it does in other places. And so if you're also not dealing with ensuring that Hollywood is paying writers in this age of IP questions and technological upheaval, actors, anybody in this space. I mean, it's just an enormous thorny challenge. 100% tariff maybe can have some effect, but it'll have to be, like all of the other tariffs, augmented with other significant policies.
Yeah, it's another example of us trying to, compete with the rest of the world, while the rest of the world is able to do sophisticated strategic policy making, and we just don't. Like we have tariffs. In this case, Trump is going to, I'm going to put a tariff on it. Well, and then you're like, oh, what does that mean? Does it get tariffed because like one of your editors was in Paris or London or? And yes, like it's not just other countries. Like Atlanta, has been pulling the rug out from under Hollywood as well by reaching out to these production companies and telling them, if you come here, we will give you this tax break, this
It's
incentive.
cronyism. Yes.
So the way to, well, I mean, it's also just kind of industrial policy in another way. Like you're subsidizing the thing that you want, and so the U.S. would then have to say, okay, Hungary is doing this. You can either negotiate with Hungary and Canada and say stop doing this, or else we're going to retaliate against X, and like that's how you do a kind of trade war, because this is this is a service that is an export of ours, and we import your maple syrup, and we're going to be mean to it if you don't stop subsidizing these Toronto film shoots, or we equalize the subsidies and go to Hollywood and say, look, if you do it here, it's worth it to us as a taxpayer to match those subsidies, and that would require Congress. Good luck with that.
So yeah, let's roll Howard Lutnick, because actually filming in Canada has been happening for a very long time. So this is B6, Howard Lutnick talking about the policy.
So Mark Carney, whom I've met as central banker, are you optimistic? Can we make a deal with Canada?
I think it's really complex. I think this is really complex because they have been basically feeding off of us for decades upon decades upon decades, right? They have their socialist regime, and it's basically feeding off of America. I mean, the president calls that out all the time. Why do we make cars in Canada? Why do we do our films in Canada? Come on. So I think the president's going to have, I think it's going to be a fascinating meeting. I'm glad I'm going to be there listening, but it's going to be a fascinating meeting tomorrow.
And of course, that meeting is happening later today, Donald Trump and Mark Carney. So it's possible, Ryan, that one read on the situation is that Donald Trump was trying to put more on the table ahead of his meeting with Mark Carney. I mean, this is not an insignificant part of the Canadian economy. There have been productions in Canada for a long time, and Hollywood has done movies and TV shows there for a long time. Trump's Truth Social post, again, only mentioned movies. This is another question that the Hollywood Reporter has raised is, first of all, how are you tariffing things that are coming across borders when a lot of this is just streaming? It's a significant, it's not like people are buying DVDs that are produced. It's a very, the data that is encoded onto a DVD, I guess, potentially is produced in China if it's post-production, or in Canada if it's post-production. But I guess it's possible that Trump just wanted to throw some leverage out there ahead of his conversation with Mark Carney. That might be one way to look at it.
It's probably more animalistic. Trump loves Hollywood. Like he has a love-hate relationship with Hollywood, and like an old man, he sees that it was better when he was younger, and he's right about that. What he doesn't want to think about is that the biggest blow, probably to Hollywood, is his trade war with China. One of the first responses from China was, "We're going to significantly reduce the amount of movies that we're going to allow from Hollywood into China." And
even though it stopped significantly,
even though it was down, it still in an absolute basis represents enormous sums of money, and that's the thing about the Chinese market now. Like it can be, maybe we're not in the top 10, but it's still huge amounts of money, right? Yeah,
it was a really big part of their growth plan going forward, and then sort of the pandemic made them realize that probably wouldn't be the case. But yes, there's still, I imagine a decent chunk of money on the table, but a ton of money on the table in Canada, UK, Hungary, where some of these productions have been moved. So we'll see.
So it looks like in 2023, Hollywood firms earned $8 billion in China.
And a lot of that is probably on older stuff too, would be my guess. Is that box office?
It's a lot of money. Revenue. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. So and also affects.
It's way down, but it's a lot of money. Is my point.
Yeah, of course. Especially when they don't have a lot of money to toss around. It's
Yeah.
not like they're doing great right now. Anyway, all that is to say, we will see how Donald Trump's meeting with Mark Carney goes today. We will see how real this policy actually is going forward. If Donald Trump wants it to be real, even just the process of implementing it, given everything we just laid out, does it apply to things that are co-produced in other countries, that are partially produced in one country? Does it apply to TV shows? Does it apply just to box offices? Does it apply to streaming? There's really no clear idea of what this would look like. So Hollywood is left to scramble and lobby and I guess hope for the best. So we'll see what happens. And we should get to Yanis Varoufakis now, Ryan.
All right, stick around for that.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.